I'll never forget the 16-year-old who broke into my church office. As a student ministry pastor, I'd been dealing with his disruptive behavior for months. Smart remarks, pranks, bullying younger students, no respect for worship. When he brought alcohol on the church retreat, I sent him home and banned him from summer camp. I had tried patience, grace, and multiple conversations, but clear boundaries had to be established for the safety and respect of the other students. A few days later, my church office was broken into. When we discovered it was this young man, his way of getting revenge for the camp decision, I met with his parents again. They defended him. Well, he was upset about not going to camp, they said, essentially blaming me for his behavior. I told them that they were fortunate I wasn't calling the police and that I stood by my decision. In the end, I felt more sadness for this boy than anger about what he'd done. Because here's what I knew. His behavior wasn't random or sudden. It wasn't the result of him going through some difficult phase or finding himself. Based on my interactions with his parents, it seemed very clear to me that this teen had never faced real boundaries or consequences as a young child. His conduct was the inevitable result of years of permissive parenting. In the name of love, his parents had never said no, and that which began in his early years was now on full display at 16. I also worked with many teens whose parents had established solid leadership early on. I remember another 16-year-old who was a natural leader in our youth group, respectful, responsible, fun-loving, and genuinely kind toward younger students. So I invited him to be a student leader in our ministry. After high school graduation, he went on to attend West Point. And what struck me the most about this young man wasn't that he went to West Point. What impressed me most was a conversation I had with his father. I was surprised to learn how hard his son was to manage as a little boy, how he and his wife had to set clear, consistent boundaries, how it was a trying season of parenting, but how they committed to calm, loving leadership in his early years. We had our battles when he was 4 and 5, his father said, but we won them then so we wouldn't have to fight bigger ones now. I was a young father at the time, and I never forgot his words. This teenager had learned early that someone stronger and wiser was in charge, that his parents cared enough to lean in when it's hard, and that love and boundaries could coexist in his family. In fact, that boundaries are love. The security of that early leadership had shaped him in remarkable ways. Proof that it's possible to lead children with strength without crushing their spirit or diminishing the beauty of their unique design. Now, I'm not suggesting that strong leadership guarantees a perfect child. Every child is different, and even great parenting doesn't eliminate all challenges. But what I've observed again and again, and what the research confirms, is this: your leadership of your child matters, period. And the beautiful thing is this: the principles that shaped that young man apply really at every age. The same leadership that matters at 4 and 5 matters at 9 and 10 and in the teenage years. The context changes, the conversations look different, but the core of what your kids need from you, it doesn't change. So let's talk about it, because everything starts here. What intentional fathering is at every stage is laying the foundation for the rest of your child's life. In the early years, patterns are being formed and precedents are being set. By adolescence, they're incredibly difficult to change. But the principles, again, carry into every phase. Your leadership shapes their internal framework for who dad is in their life and what his voice means to them. Dad, you can do a lot after becoming your child's leader. You should really do nothing before. That's how important your strong and yet tender leadership is. Every child desperately needs someone loving to lead them, and as their father, they are wired to follow you. But that doesn't mean they'll always comply. Testing and rebellion are normal at every age. What they're really doing is asking, is there someone strong, consistent, and loving enough to lead me? You need to be the answer to that question. Some might argue that fathering should focus on caregiving, gentleness, and tolerance rather than leadership. This creates a false dichotomy. It's really a misunderstanding of leadership. Leadership, when properly understood, is the highest form of caregiving a father can provide. Consider what true leadership looks like: directing your child away from danger, establishing consistent rituals and routines that build family culture, setting boundaries that create emotional security, providing loving correction that teaches right from wrong. This isn't authoritarianism, it's actually care expressed through decisive action. Research consistently shows that children thrive under what developmental psychologists call authoritative parenting, a style characterized by high warmth combined with clear expectations and boundaries. Diana Bonren's landmark studies found that children raised by authoritative parents show better emotional regulation, higher self-esteem, and stronger social competence than those raised with permissive approaches. A father who refuses to lead, who won't establish routines, set boundaries, or provide direction, isn't being more loving. He's abandoning his child to chaos. Leadership at its heart is love expressed through action, the courage to say no when necessary, the consistency to follow through on your word, and the strength to provide the security that comes from knowing someone capable is in charge. This is the unique contribution that fathers are designed by God to provide. Let me illustrate. Let's say your 5-year-old throws a tantrum in the grocery store because you won't buy him candy. You have two choices. The passive approach: give your child candy to stop the scene, ignore the behavior without correcting them, letting them scream while you shop, plead with them along the way to be quiet and hope they'll eventually stop on their own, bribe them by promising something when they get home, in essence rewarding their misbehavior. Or you can choose loving leadership. You calmly but firmly kneel down to their level and say, "I can see you're upset, but we're not buying candy today. You can choose to calm down and walk with me, or you can sit in the cart until we're done. Either way, we're not buying candy today." You follow through based on their choice, calmly, firmly, consistently. Then you continue shopping, calmly without giving in, showing that tantrums don't work. You don't abandon your task, and you don't cave to their behavior. The second approach isn't easier. It takes more energy, more patience, more strength, but it creates security. Your child learns that you're in control when they feel out of control, that boundaries exist for their good, and that your leadership is reliable. That same principle plays out at 8, at 12, at 15. The testing looks different. The stakes are higher, but the leadership required of you is the same. Calm, firm, consistent, loving. That's the dad your kids need at every stage. So you're not a dictator or a pushover or just the guy who pays the bills. You're called to lead your children. The question is, what kind of leader will you be? A dad who leads with intention, or one who's passive and permissive? A dad who earns his child's trust or just demands obedience? One who wins their heart or just wins the battle? Okay, at every phase of their development, your child is subconsciously asking 3 critical questions. They are, at heart, leadership questions about love, safety, and security, about who you are as their dad. And God has entrusted you with the sacred role of answering these questions. Question number 1, to whom do I belong? I remember tucking my kids in at night when they were little, saying to my sons things like, "You're my boy," or "You're my buddy," or to my daughter, "You're my little princess." And to my teen, "That's my boy," or "That's my girl." Simple, repeated words that anchored something deep in them about who they are and to whom they belong. They're mine, and I'm delighted to be their dad. These are not just cute little sayings. They're really vital because for children, self-definition begins not with "who am I?" but with "whose am I?" That is, identity starts with identification to a loving leader. In the earliest years, children don't possess a conscious sense of who they are, but they instinctively need to feel who they belong to. That sense of attachment and belonging becomes the emotional center of gravity in their life. And it doesn't stop there. The 10-year-old still needs to know he's yours. The 14-year-old even when she's pushing back against everything, still needs to know she belongs to a dad who claims her. The question changes shape, but it never goes away. Your child needs to know, even if only subconsciously, that they are not alone in the world, that someone is deeply responsible for them, that they are not abandoned or unprotected, but securely and lovingly held. Your job is to show up then with strength, constantly and consistently across the full range of experiences at every age, being there to be the one they belong to. They are yours. Question number 2, who can I trust? Your child is always developing core beliefs about what's dependable, what's safe, whether their home is stable, and whether you, as their father, are trustworthy. In essence, they're asking, am I really safe and secure? You can't always make the world perfectly safe, but you can make your presence a place of refuge. Through your calm strength and consistent love, your child learns, hey, the world may be scary sometimes, but I'm safe with Dad. I trust him. What a gift we give our kids. The key to building that trust? Reliability, consistent presence, and actions across time. And there are 3 ways that we build that reliability. First, dads become trusted by being promise keepers. Your word should be your bond, always. If you say you'll be home for dinner, be home. If you promise to read a story, read the story. If you say 5 more minutes, mean 5. These seemingly small moments carry emotional weight. They teach your child whether your words are safe to trust. Second way, dads become trusted by being reliable and consistent. When what you say actually happens, your child learns that you are believable. If you say, jump, I'll catch you, and then catch them, trust builds. If you say, if you disobey, you will go to timeout. Or if you're not home on time, you're staying home for the weekend. And then calmly follow through. When you do that, trust builds. If your emotional responses are consistent, trust builds. Calm correction when your child messes up creates safety. Your consistency across space and time forms their framework for trust. But when your children can't predict your responses or you don't follow through consistently, it creates deep insecurity that undermines their sense of safety and belonging. And that insecurity doesn't age out of them. It follows them into the teen years, into young adulthood, into how they relate to authority and to you. And then here's the third way that dads become trusted, by apologizing when they're wrong. When you lose your temper or make a mistake, saying, Dad was wrong, I'm sorry, will you forgive me? That doesn't weaken your authority, it strengthens trust. It shows your child that you're safe to be around even when things go wrong, that relationships can survive conflict, and that strong people take responsibility for their actions. And then there's a fourth way dads become trusted, through consistent family rhythms. Research from Columbia University and the National Center on Addiction and Substance Abuse shows that families who eat dinner together regularly raise children with better emotional regulation, stronger family bonds, lower rates of behavioral problems, and a reduced likelihood of risky behaviors during adolescence. But it's not just dinner. It's the predictable rhythms that create security, morning routines, bedtime prayers, pizza Fridays, weekend traditions, family customs at holiday celebrations. These create stability and safety in a chaotic world. My friend Darwin Penny, who is a former Major League Baseball player and current professional scout for the Kansas City Royals, he serves on the board of Father Friend, and he tells a powerful story about his father's consistency. His dad worked long hours and suffered from arthritis. It's not an easy combination, but when Darwin was young, he would wait for his father to come home, and as soon as his dad stepped out of the truck, Darwin would ask him to play catch. Almost without fail, his dad would respond, "You got my glove?" Darwin says it was always rhetorical because his dad always knew that Darwin had his glove ready and waiting. So night after night, his tired, aching father showed up. That predictability built trust, and to this day, Darwin speaks fondly about the character and consistency of his father. You know, we all grow tired. We all have reasons to say, not tonight. But being predictably present, even when it's hard, builds trust in the heart of a child that lasts a lifetime. Okay, question one was, to whom do I belong? Question two, who can I trust? And then number three, who's in charge? This goes back to where we started. By the end of childhood, and honestly long before, your child needs to know that they are not in charge, not of the family, the schedule, or the rules. Neglecting to send this message creates entitled children and teenagers. You're responsible, Dad, for your home, for your kids, for what takes place. Many modern homes are child centered, emotion driven environments where the loudest or the most reactive voice is the one that decides. That's not security, it's chaos, and it sets everyone up for frustration ahead. Children are safest when they know someone wiser and stronger is lovingly setting the boundaries and holding the line. They need to learn that in the end, they don't get to decide everything. Your child doesn't need to feel like the world revolves around them. They need to trust that someone older, stronger, and more grounded is at the wheel. That someone is you. The key word here is a word we may not like, but the word is discipline. Not authoritarianism, not intimidation, but calm, confident discipline and direction. From the earliest ages, your children are forming a moral framework. They need to learn right from wrong, truth from error, safety from harm. They need to understand how to respond to loving authority. And you, as their father, are assigned the sacred responsibility of providing this to them. So lead with both firmness and warmth. Don't be afraid to say no or to enforce consequences with love. This isn't about being controlling, it's about providing structure. Boundaries don't suffocate a child, they secure them. And here's what I've seen. The father who gets this right, who answers all three of these questions consistently and lovingly across the years, they're not the dads who had it easy. They're the dads who made a decision that loving their kids well was worth the hard moments, worth the battles at 4, at 5, worth the consistency when it cost them something. And the dad who answers them well at every stage is building something in his children that lasts far longer than childhood. So, Dad, will you lead your children or will you take the easy path? Your kids need a strong, loving man to step up. There's just about nothing more important. So this week, lean in, lead well, and love big.